You kind of figured it out as you read the book. It had a really interesting crop of characters, everyone from Lou Reed, there's Gerard, Brigid, Taylor. And there was a couple of they took out in a bus that Nico drove out to Michigan to play at Ann Arbor. Gretchen, Marisol, Sam Green. All these people were influential in one form or another, and I won't get into each of their stories because I could talk for the next 2 hours, but they were all really interesting characters. The interviews were fantastic.
Not so. This group essentially is part of the Silver Factory. Gerard came into the scene in June 1963. Had silk screening experience, so Andy hired him thanks to the introduction from Charles Henry Ford. Charles and Gerard worked continuously with Andy until 1967. Andy met Taylor in August of '63, and very shortly after that, Gerard and Taylor and Wynne Chamberlain went across the country for the first big Warhol show at the Ferris Gallery. It was also when Andy made his first real semi-story film, Tarzan and Jane Regained, sort of.
Paris on $10 a day. London on $10 a day. Rome on $10 a day. Remember those days? The days of cheap steamship travel across the Atlantic and then looking for a place to stay and a good meal? John Wilcock does. He wrote books with those titles on how to stretch the almighty dollar to get more bang for your buck while summering across Europe. John certainly had the wanderlust and temperament in those days and turned it into a byproduct that any holiday traveler, backpacker, or college student could easily relate, finding one's way to those hideaway, inexpensive pension and trattoria. He had a built-in audience. He wrote the Everyman's Carl Baedeker.
Restaurant bar chain, and I walked in with my dad, and the day before I had actually been in jail in a youth jail for about 4 or 5 months, the notorious Spofford Street in the South Bronx, which is recently closed, thank goodness. And I had gone to court on the Friday, and surprise, surprise, they let me go. I had no idea I was going to get out, and my father got custody of me. So the next day, here we are doing the galleries, and ended up at Stark's, and in one corner was Gerard and Andy and Chuck and a bunch of other artists, and my dad and I went and joined them, and somebody bought us a meal, because we very rarely had the price of a restaurant meal on us. Somebody bought us a burger, and my dad a beer and me a big chocolate milkshake, and sort of sat around being bored while they were all talking grown-up art talk, and suddenly Andy peered across the table at me and he said, "And you, what do you do?" And my father piped up, "I just sprung her from jail." Thank you.
I did a play for which I won an Obie, a Frank O'Hara play, and along with that I did a Leroy Jones play, which was, I played a white minister in a black church. It was integrated. But a month or two before, The Dutchman came out with it, and Leroy was selling black against white. And I think Martin King said we aren't doing that anymore. But anyway, he and Frank O'Hara, and you know, if you win an Obie, if you have a major off-Broadway show with Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman and so many more, if the play runs, the Hollywood people come down eventually. We had 4 performances, and the director double sold the seats. Disaster. But we were offered any theater downtown, and Leroy Jones kept telling Frank O'Hara, "I'll sign tomorrow." He had no intention. He was selling black against white with the Dutchman. He's also phony. And it's such Hollywood, New York bullshit, you know.
I'm on the cover of Tape Recording magazine, and I was interested in gadgets the way people are into computers today. And I was just talking to Steve today about a lot of people who think of Andy as either a Fagin or a Peter Pan type of character.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a little personal note.
When can I get a hold of you?
I'll write down my email address. Right there. Or you can get your email address.
I feel like I'm running for office.
On this card, down here, right on this card. Almost.